Tu mochila es muy grande, a memoir podcast by Starlo M. Galetta. My journey on el Camino de Santiago del Norte. This podcast is my memoirs. What started 10 years ago as descriptions of pictures turned into something so much more. As we walk the ancient way through cobblestone villages to a modern courtroom while surviving a near-death experience, I can promise my Camino is unlike any you have heard before. Please consider liking and subscribing and leaving me a comment. It lets YouTube know that I'm not talking to myself. Thank you for joining me. It is now time to walk. Tu mochila es muy grande. Mucho pesos. I can give only one reason why my backpack was heavier than others thought it should be. I was a Girl Scout. I always come prepared. I heard from so many people before I left, if you need it, just buy it when you get there. My thought was, why buy when I already have? It has been 10 years since my first backpacking trip across America and Canada. The same trip I decided that I would hike the Camino one day. I can still see myself staggering through New York City with 60 pounds of stuff. I would sit down and have to have help standing back up. One floundering moment in the subway when, like a turtle, I couldn't right myself comes to mind. It is amazing how many pairs of feet can walk past in just a minute. I have learned many things from the last few summers, hiking on the Appalachian Trail, biking to Tallahassee, living out of my backpack with just the essentials. The most important provision is coffee, and thanks to one of my students, I had a 30-day supply. I had my tent under a kilo, my sleeping bag, my sleep pad, my sleep sheet, and my jet boil to cook with. All would be used enough times to be worth their weight. My clothes, while heavier than others, were utilized especially in the first part of the trip when the temperatures never got out of the 50s. I wore 2 pairs of pants, 3 shirts, and my rain gear every day for a week. Though most commented that my boots were too big, I was very happy for them when slogging through the mud and clinging to rock faces. All of the other sundry items were used except for the bug spray, sunscreen, and bag of instant rice that I carried the whole way. I had 4 mail drops to replace the things I used, and the total cost of shipping was much cheaper than if I bought the items while there. No, mi mochila was only muy grande to others. It had everything I needed and nothing that I didn't. In life, we have many burdens to carry. My bag got lighter the further that I walked. In this episode, we pick up our journey in Deba. If you'd like to know where we started and how we got to where this episode begins, please check out episode 1, days 1 through 5. The mud and rain continues, but as it happens on the Camino, I will end up right where I need to be, right when I need to be there. If you have any questions, please drop me a comment. And if you'd like me to include anything, let me know that too. Put your scissors away and grab your bag. We'll start out by answering the most important question any hiker has. The town of Deba. I had 2 spoken thoughts when I finally arrived in Deba, and these 2 thoughts would pop out many times along the way, whether anyone was around to hear them or not. Number 1, I'm so glad I stopped last night. I never would have made it. Number 2, ¿Dónde está el baño? ¿Dónde está el baño? ¿Dónde está el baño? The first building I saw is what appeared to be a brand new school. Couldn't sleep there, can't eat there, can't go to the bathroom there. My survival instincts canceled out a drop-in foreign teacher visit to have something to report back to my students. I was also carrying scissors, which the sign clearly states is not allowed. My guidebook said there would be an elevator to take me into town. I tried to picture what this would look like to distract my thoughts from other pressing needs. My one attempt at asking for the bathroom had been answered with a long pause, words so rapid I couldn't understand, but hand directions that clearly indicated down. So I went down, passing buildings that were several hundred years old without a pause. I stopped another person, a woman, sure she could see my need, and asked again, "Donde está el baño?" Something in response? Perdón? I had already learned that no one understood me when I said I don't understand in Spanish. Something, something, something público. I took a guess that she was saying something about a public bathroom. Sí, sí, I said with my eyes glazed over, my feet doing a strange wiggle dance. Something, something, something público, and a point in a new direction. I crossed the street, and out of nowhere, a small tunnel-shaped building came into view with a large sign that said, something, something, something público. I never could pronounce the other Basque language words, but my script now included a new word to use, público. I walked back to the historic district laughing at about how I'd walked past the church twice without even noticing it. When I got inside, I did what I would do in any open church I came across. Stop, drop, and pray. After wiping away the tears that always came when thinking about my journey on the Camino, I photographed what I could see so I could share it with others. I only took one picture of me praying, but this scene would be repeated in many churches, in too many small towns to mention. With lightened steps, I made my way to a cafe and almost fell asleep in my food. It took me 3 hours to put a thought together about finding a place to sleep. And just as I was about to get up, a German named Robert started talking to me. So there I sat, having a conversation about the Rowlett Charter, German education, American history, and the Bush years. Somewhere in the midst of standardized testing and the crazy cold weather of northern Spain compared to the blistering heat of Germany that day, I realized that this was my first conversation in English. I hadn't had a day of rest since before school was out, and even though I'd only walked 3 kilometers that day, I was done. I checked into a motel, made tentative plans to have dinner with Robert, and slept the rest of the afternoon away. Day 6. Deba to Markina. There is nothing better than the sight of a buffet breakfast spread out around the room to the eyes of a hungry peregrina. I settled in for a 2-hour eating frenzy that morning, trying a bit of everything that was offered, whether I could identify it or not. I had had dinner with Robert, the German, the night before, a dinner of pulpo, anchovies, and croquetas, con jamón. My grandmother had always said, you have to try something before you say you do not like it. As Robert plucked an anchovy off his plate and thrust the fork in my direction, I knew I would have to eat it. He was so happy to be sharing them with me. I hid the fact I can't stand fish as to not damper his excitement. Surprisingly, I actually liked it. The anchovy didn't have a bit of fish taste. Robert told me that was because the batch had been caught 2 hours before, cooked as soon as they were brought ashore. Ugh, pulpo made me gag. The croquetas became my favorite food. As I fixed a cup of cafe soda that morning, I realized I was walking a little funny and slow. What I had thought was my morning hike or hobble was in fact something that was not wearing off as the morning progressed. I sat before my plate and contemplated this turn of events. My right knee was bruised and swollen, and I told myself maybe I should start walking and see what happens. I had made an agreement with my family that if my body were not capable of walking, I would have no problems taking the bus. Only a hiker can understand the guilt that comes with this thought. I made my way to the nearest bus station with heavy feet. The rational part of my brain told me that if I broke something now, I may not be able to continue at all. So missing a few kilometers could make all the difference in the long run. It took an hour of asking people for help before I finally was able to understand anything about catching the bus. When the little old man appeared at my side, I took my headphones out to talk to him. By the time we got on the bus, we were having a full conversation in Spanish. My sentences were words strung together that may not have been in the proper order, and my answers may have just been one-word responses, but I had made myself understood while understanding the context of what he said. He left as quickly as he came. When I got off the bus, I made my way to the Camino and then to the albergue de pilgrims in Markina. I was certain the cheap police would meet me at the door, because I had taken the autobus. I understood most of what was told to me about the procedures, the rules, and where to leave my boots. I ate some paraguayos, a fruit that Itzela had introduced me to, and headed off to look around until Mass at the church next door. Coming into the graveyard of another church, I laughed about how I had told my students I would be sleeping in cemeteries along the way. There wasn't any room for me, much less my tent. I was sitting in a pew at the cathedral when Mass was supposed to begin. I couldn't wait to hear the singing. I was alone, and within minutes I could hear voices in another room and thought, how nice. The nuns must be singing while coming in. Muffled words came through a door. I was certain the priest was giving a blessing so that as they walked into the congregation of just me, more singing. I finally decided to get up and find out where the singing was coming from. After it was over, several older ladies surrounded me. One grabbed my arm and spoke with such rapid Spanish any thought of comprehension went out the door. A woman from California who lives in Spain translated, Peregrina, please pray for us in Santiago. Please pray for us to St. James. Please take our prayers with you. They called me a blessing. They hugged me close and kissed my cheeks. They held my hands and grabbed my arms. They thanked me for walking the way. I headed back to the albergue with the arms of their prayers holding me tight. Prayers. Carry my prayers, my heart-strung loves, the silence of my sorrows. In this jaded age, we get so used to throwing thoughts and prayers at suffering that we forget what the words really mean. Praying for others and surrounding them in thought is a conscious action. It cannot be done by words alone. There must be a connection. There must be a link that binds the prayer with the person that they are praying for. Thoughts and prayers are indelibly the same. Together, they are writ in the heart. I was surprised by the number of people that asked me to pray them. I was humbled. For a stranger to give you their prayers to carry is one of the greatest honors that I know. The next time someone asks you to pray for them, do so with intention. Day 7. Markina de Guernica. She blew in the door the night before, with her head wrapped in a scarf, jeans covered in mud, and cotton socks embedded into her feet. With a mysterious air surrounding her like a fog, I knew someone special had just crossed my path. She hobbled away from the check-in desk as if she were 150 years old. She made her way over to me as if we had always known each other. Within seconds, we were talking. As happy as I was to be using Spanish, I was overjoyed she spoke English. In 2 days, she had covered the same distance that had taken me 5 days to travel. And she had done it in the worst of the rain and the mud. However, the journey had taken a toll on her feet. She made her way to the showers as I went for my first aid bag and one of my 3 pairs of wool socks. As she stepped out of the shower, I made her throw the evil cotton socks away and handed her my extra pair. I checked out the horrific blisters she had. One blister on the bottom of her foot was as big as a silver dollar. Conversation poured like rain. For the next couple of days, we were together like the socks on our feet. As we started out that morning, the hospitallero, or the person that runs the albergue, told us that we could not take the Camino because it was flooded from some water that had come down from the mountains during the night. We saw proof of this in the little stream. The day before, it had been running hard, but the water was clear. That morning, in the same spot, the water was churning with tree trunks and branches, and the water was a muddy red. It had been raining for over 100 days in this region. Mercedes said they were calling it the year without summer. We walked the highway bypass and stopped in the town that Simon Bolivar was born in. Her feet hurt. My knee hurt. We had brunch while looking at a church that was built in the 1500s or so. She told me it wasn't old. A little old man watched us from the porch. The town was very quiet, and we were the only people on the street. We were discussing our pains and decided to stop at a monastery just ahead that offered a place to stay for pilgrims. Wondering how far it was, we headed over to the little old man to ask. We didn't make it across the street. He jumped up, put his shoes on, grabbed his cane, and headed our way. He had crystal blue eyes full of love and kindness. Mercedes introduced us, and he was excited to use his English. He told us that he had been to the United States, and he was very proud of that. He pointed out that Simon Bolivar's father had lived across the street. When I mentioned how old the church was, he said it was new, but it did used to be a part of some army defense system, and pointed out the military features. Old, he said, would be the Roman road that we would be taking outside of town. He was certain that the monks would let us stay. We walked the Roman road to the monastery, marveling at how perfectly placed the stones were. We made our plans about resting and reflecting and letting her blisters heal. Wandering into the monastery courtyard, we saw a man wearing a blue jumpsuit and Crocs. Our idea of monk fashion was thrown out the window. We were pretty surprised when he said we couldn't stay. "You are here too early. You can make it to Guernica today," he told Mercedes in Spanish. She came back to where I was and told me this, and I gave him the best teacher look I have and told her she should show him the blister on her foot. Sometimes it was probably really good that I didn't speak Spanish. Our strength was deflated. We couldn't stay long enough to rest because we had over 15 kilometers that we needed to get done. We enjoyed what we could and squished and slid up a muddy mountain, empowering each other, sharing our lives. At a juncture where the Camino split to the left and the roadway to the right, on the Camino waymark, we found a piece of paper that said something like, "Bad, bad dog, 800 meters ahead, beware," in English. Some signs in life are unclear, but this one left nothing to wonder. We checked our guides, we had a map, we could join the Camino in the next village. We chose the roadway. So much life flowed beyond our eyes. Mountain majesties carved by time, rain-soaked fields waiting for spring, hidden history watching two peregrinas hobble on. There are so many things I could say about what we saw, the fall I took as a car sped by, the conversations that rippled our souls. Mercedes became one of those friends that you have been waiting all your life to meet. Ella es mi mariposa español. Through pure determination and sheer grit, we made it to Guernica. We found a hotel to share and made ourselves at home. Her blister, an angry puddle that had overtaken her toes, needed to be bandaged, and she used what she called plasters. I made her try some Neosporin, telling her it was magic medicine. We talked until the night grew cold as the sound of a festival lulled us to sleep. We had walked over 25 kilometers and couldn't have done it without each other. I hope you enjoyed your time with me. I'm your host, Starla Goletta, and you are listening to a Think Time podcast. Please subscribe and get notified. I look forward to your comments and continuing our journey in the next episode. Make good choices, be good people. Until next time, buen camino.